There is no lie more subtle, more socially acceptable, and more psychologically dense than the one many modern women utter with a strangely robotic conviction. I don't want to be a mother. This is not a moralistic accusation, a conservative judgment, or a manifesto against individual freedom. It is, rather, an excavation into the depths of the human psyche, guided by Carl Jung and his symbolic cartography of the soul, to understand what truly transpires in the unconscious when a woman renounces motherhood with apparent coldness. This statement, increasingly common in the liquid times described by Zygmunt Bauman, carries a weight that does not belong solely to the individual, but to an entire civilization in symbolic collapse. What is revealed behind the I don't want to be a mother is not a simple choice. It is a muffled scream inside a crumbling cathedral, where the archetypes of the great mother and the anima woman have been buried under ideological debris and unresolved trauma. In Jungian theory, the psyche is inhabited by universal archetypes, primordial images that structure the collective unconscious. One of these archetypes is the mother. She does not merely represent the woman who bears children, but everything that is origin, that nurtures, that envelops, that welcomes, and that destroys if necessary. The mother is also the earth, the night, the cosmic womb. That is why every woman, at birth, already carries within herself this ancestral energy that connects her to the cycle of life and death. When a woman says she does not want to be a mother, what is actually happening is not the extermination of this archetype, but its repression. Something has been displaced, denied, expelled from consciousness and cast into the dark depths of the psyche, where it accumulates with other repressions until forming what Jung called the shadow. And this shadow, once ignored, does not disappear. It retaliates, transforms into symptoms, phobias, neuroses, existential anguish that no brilliant career or international trip can soothe. To understand why this renunciation of motherhood has become not only acceptable, but even celebrated in certain circles, we must look at history through the eyes of a symbolic archaeologist. Since the Industrial Revolution, women have been progressively displaced from their symbolic role as guardians of life and converted into productive agents. This is not to deny the civilizational advances brought about by women's access to the workforce, but to acknowledge that this shift was not neutral. A symbolic amputation occurred. Amputation. By being called to compete on the same field as men, women had to masculinize their psyche, adopting rational, competitive, individualistic postures, traits associated with the animus archetype, the internal masculine principle according to Jung. The consequence of this was an internal civil war. The modern woman began to war against herself, between anima and animus, between the force that generates and the force that conquers. And in surrendering to the collective animus, the masculine spirit of late modernity, she began to despise everything that connects her to her telluric essence: care, the womb, continuity, the cycle. But why has this lie, and yes, it is an archetypal lie, become so common, so comfortable, so naturalized? Because Western culture, especially in the last 100 years, has embarked on a brutal project of desacralizing life. There is no longer room for mystery, for symbol, for cycle. Everything must be rational, utilitarian, measurable. Motherhood, in this context, has been reduced to a life project, a personal decision, as if it were a graduate course or an exchange program. Women have come to see their womb as a biological resource rather than as an altar. The child ceased to be a promise and became a cost. The mother ceased to be sacred and became a statistical burden in productivity reports. And here enters the most sophisticated psychological mechanism of all: rationalization. When a woman says she doesn't want to be a mother, she usually presents a series of rational arguments. I want to focus on my career. I don't like children. The world is too difficult. I don't want to lose my freedom. But all these arguments, as logical as they may seem, are masks. Jung warned us, the more reason dominates the psyche, the more irrationality hides in the shadows. Rationalization is the ego's last resort to avoid confronting the terror of the unconscious. What's at stake here is not a rational choice but an archetypal wound. Something was severed, perhaps due to the absence of a nurturing mother, perhaps due to childhood trauma, perhaps due to a culture that demonizes the deep feminine. And in the face of this wound, the mind constructs narratives to justify the denial of life. But the soul is not convinced. It groans, it cries, it goes mad in silence. Western civilization is sick precisely because its women have been convinced not to generate. And this is not only about biological children, but about any form of creation involving surrender, renunciation, devotion, sacredness. The woman who rejects motherhood also rejects the creative principle within herself, and this principle, once denied, transforms into resentment, coldness, emotional sterility. How many women today live like elegant zombies, surrounded by degrees, achievements, and trips, but are deeply sad, lonely, resentful? How many need anxiolytics to endure the life they rationally chose but their soul abhors? How many laugh loudly on social media while collapsing in panic attacks in the bathroom? Of course, there are exceptions. Some women genuinely have a psychic structure that does not align with the archetype of motherhood. But they are rare. The vast majority lie to themselves. And this lie, in such cases, is a survival mechanism. To admit the desire to be a mother, in a world that demonizes motherhood, is like confessing a crime. The modern woman fears appearing weak, dependent, submissive. She has been trained to hide her desire to generate, as if hiding a disease. And so, she disconnects from her essence, from her body, from her own womb. That organ, which, as Clarissa Pinkola Estes said, is not only for birthing children, but for birthing worlds, ideas, gestures, poetry, the sacred. The denial of motherhood is not just personal. It is political, cultural, spiritual. It is the symptom of a civilization that has lost contact with the deep feminine. A civilization that values machines more than the womb, algorithms more than embraces, control more than care. Jung warned that an excess of rationality destroys the soul, and what we see today are destroyed souls, hidden in made-up bodies and progressive discourses. What we see are women screaming independence while crying in silence for a child who will never come. Because time is implacable. Youth passes, the cycle closes, the womb grows silent, and then, too late, the soul begins to scream. It takes courage to look inward and admit the most archaic and sacred desire of the feminine psyche, the desire to generate. This is not about yielding to social pressure, but about reclaiming an inner connection. True freedom does not lie in denying archetypes, but in consciously dialoguing with them. The woman who acknowledges her desire to be a mother does not become weak, but powerful. She reconnects with the earth, with the moon, with the cosmic womb. She becomes a channel of the sacred, and even if she chooses not to have biological children, she will find ways to generate in the world, to nurture, to care, to create, because motherhood is not just a biological fact but an archetypal function. And when this function is integrated, the woman flourishes. When it is denied, she rots from within. Therefore, before repeating mechanically, "I don't want to be a mother," one must ask, who inside me is saying this? Is it the whole, integrated, conscious woman? Or is it a social persona built to please a sick world? Is it a choice or an escape? Is it expression or repression? Jung said that the path of individuation passes through the confrontation with the shadow, and the shadow of the modern woman is precisely this lie repeated until it becomes a mantra. Confronting this lie is the first step toward healing, and to heal, in this case, is also to heal the world, because the world needs the mother, not only the biological mother, but the symbolic mother, the whole woman, the creator, the nurturer, the bridge between worlds. And as long as she is silenced by discourses that confuse freedom with the denial of essence, we will remain condemned to a sterile civilization, technological, brilliant, fast, and absolutely empty.